You're watching Sky News. It's now time for our report on Tony Blair's day in front of the Chilcot Committee.
Well away from the protesters whose minds are already made up, Tony Blair took a back entrance for what is widely regarded as his last chance to change minds and to defend the decision he made for war in 2003. The panel insist their minds are not made up. They are impartial, they say, but behind them they have 8 weeks' worth of evidence, more than 70 witnesses, and are in possession of most, but not all, the documentary evidence they need. All to question a man who looked uncharacteristically tense. Questioning began with an event which moulded policy on Iraq. 9/11, it seems, changed everything. Saddam may have had no link at all with al-Qaeda. Mr. Blair was keen to make that point, but he stressed that what it did was change the perception of what constituted a threat.
If September the 11th hadn't happened, our assessment of the risk of allowing Saddam any possibility of him reconstituting his programs would not have been the same. But after September the 11th, and if you'd like me to now, I'll explain what a difference that made to the thinking. After September the 11th, our view, the American view, changed dramatically. Point about this act in New York was that had they been able to kill even more people than those 3,000, they would have. And so after that time, my view was you could not take risks with this issue at all. And one dimension of it, because we were advised obviously that these people would use chemical or biological weapons or a nuclear device if they could get hold of them, that completely changed our assessment of where the risks for security lay.
The meeting with George Bush at his Crawford ranch in April 2002, a whole year before the invasion, is widely believed to be the moment that Tony Blair committed all to Bush. Not so, he said.
During the course of these discussions, do you think you gave him any commitments?
The only commitment I gave, and I gave this very openly at the meeting, was a commitment to deal with Saddam. And that wasn't a private commitment, that was a public commitment.
So you were agreed on the end, but not on the means?
We were agreed on both, actually, as it came to finally, but we were agreed that we had to confront this issue, that Saddam had to come back into compliance with the international community. And as I think I said in the press conference with President Bush, the method of doing that is open.
So many people believe that you entered into a firm commitment because some undertakings were given that you will be with him no matter what.
The position was not a covert position. It was an open position.
That's what you were saying, but what did President Bush understand, you think, you meant by that? Because we heard from Alistair Campbell about, the tenor of your correspondence with him, but what was his understanding? What did he take it to mean?
I think he took it to mean what I'd said, both at the press conference and in the meeting, which is that we would be with them in dealing with this threat. How we dealt with it was an open question, and even at that stage, of course, I was raising the issue of going the UN route.
Throughout, Mr. Blair focused on some pretty nuanced arguments, one being the different positions from which America and the UK were coming. America's priority, he said, was always regime change, but Britain's was disarmament. Still, that contradicted somewhat with his comments to Fern Britain last month.
The Americans, in a sense, were saying, we're for regime change because we don't trust he's ever going to give up his WMD ambitions. We were saying we have to deal with his WMD ambitions. If that means regime change, so be it.
But of course, in a recent television interview with Fern Britain, you were asked if you'd known then that there were no WMDs, would you still have gone on? And you replied, I would still have thought it right to remove him. So even without the WMDs, you were saying in December, very recently, that you would still have thought it right to remove him. And what I'm trying to grope for is precisely that point.
Right, well, let me deal with the Fern Britain interview. And, Mr. Rodri, even with all my experience in dealing with interviews, it still indicates that I've got something to learn about. I did not use the words regime change in that interview, and I did not in any sense mean to change the basis. Obviously, all I was saying was that you couldn't describe the nature of the threat in the same way if you knew then what you know now, because some of the intelligence about WMD is shown to be wrong. It was in no sense a change of the position, and I just simply say to you, the position was that it was the breach of the United Nations resolutions on WMD. That was the cause. It was then, and it remains.
The dossier of September 2002 caused significant controversy. It was designed to illustrate why Tony Blair was so concerned about Saddam. It contained the claim that he could launch his weapons of mass destruction within just 45 minutes, something that was widely misinterpreted without correction, and of course the assertion that his weapons capability was beyond doubt.
The 45-minute claim is very specific but very controversial. Is it fair to say that the intelligence referred to chemical, possibly biological, munitions for short-range battlefield use, but that specificity was lost in the document?
This was a headline, I think, in the Evening Standard newspaper the next day.
And the Sun and the Express.
I've said on many occasions, not least to the Butler inquiry, it would have been better to have corrected in the light of the significance it later took on. Between September 2002 and the end of May 2003, there were 40,000 written parliamentary questions on Iraq. It was mentioned twice. All I'm saying is that
I appreciate
ex post facto, this has taken on a far greater significance than it ever did at the time.
And I think you said in the foreword that the assessed intelligence has established beyond doubt that Iraq has continued to produce chemical and biological weapons. Was it wise to say that intelligence is ever beyond doubt?
I think what I said in the foreword was that I believed it was beyond doubt. I did believe it. I mean, that was and I did believe it, frankly, beyond doubt. Now, I would take government right out of this altogether. I would simply have published the JIC assessments, because they were absolutely strong enough on their own. I think you would have been hard pushed to have found virtually anybody who doubted he had WMD and a WMD capability and program.
I wonder why Iraq was chosen rather than Iran.
If you wanted to start somewhere on WMD, you started with the person who used them, and you started with the person who was in breach of UN resolutions.
Other countries which were just as opposed to the idea of Saddam having WMD as us clearly didn't agree that military action was needed or justified by the level of threat at that time. So they didn't accept the why Iraq, why now questions, or at least they didn't give two yeses to that. And I'm trying to work out why you did and they didn't.
You see, for me, because of the change after September the 11th, I wasn't prepared to run that risk. I really wasn't prepared to take the risk. Well, that's up to them. As I sometimes say to people, this isn't about a lie or a conspiracy or a deceit or a deception. It's a decision. And the decision I had to take was, given Saddam's history, given his use of chemical weapons, given the over 1 million people whose deaths he caused, given 10 years of breaking UN resolutions, could we take the risk? I had to take the decision. And I believed, and in the end so did the Cabinet, so did Parliament incidentally, that we were right not to run that risk. And my judgment, maybe other people don't take this view, and that's for the leaders of today to decide. My judgment is you don't take any risks with this issue.
Made that, I think, very clear.
And that desire to get his message across was a theme throughout. Mr. Blair quite clearly came into this with a script. Continually, he tried to steer the questions his way.
I mean, I've actually got one or two of them here, but it's just quite interesting.
I want to refer back.
I just wanted to make one other point, if you don't mind me.
Yeah, no.
Can I just make one point here, which I think is quite important as well? But let me tell you, this is a really important point here. So, Martin, can I just say one thing, though?
After the break, Mr. Blair faces questions on the diplomacy, the legality and the significant difficulties in the aftermath. He's also asked if he has any regrets.